I have described the importance of maintaining Arctic sea ice many times in this space. I have also expressed surprise when climate scientists act stunned at the ongoing rapid rate of environmental change. The planet is amid the most abrupt event in its history, as reported by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change on October 8, 2018, in its report, Global Warming of 1.5 Degrees. Yes, Earth is amid the most abrupt event in its history, as we have known for more than 6 years. Yet I never hear a word from corporate media outlets, government officials, or paid climate scientists about this most important of events. Adding to my disgust, the stories keep landing in my email inbox. Here's one from the Cool Down on March 14, 2025. This article is titled, Scientists Shocked by Acceleration of Melting Crisis. We are surprised by the rate. The subhead correctly reads, quote, melting ice doesn't just mean rising sea levels, it can reshape life as we know it, end quote. Indeed, rising sea levels are the least of our problems resulting from an overheated planet. Of far more critical concern is the ongoing, continuing loss of habitat for vertebrates, mammals, and the vertebrate mammals known as Homo sapiens. Here's the lead for the article at the Cool Down. Quote, from the towering peaks of the Himalayas to the frozen shores of Alaska, the world's ice is vanishing at an alarming rate, and it's affecting more than just the landscape, end quote. 3 paragraphs provide an overview of the article under a section titled, What's Happening? Quote, scientists estimate that 15 million people are at risk of experiencing catastrophic flooding as glacial lakes swell and burst. In Bhutan, for example, authorities are relocating entire communities to protect them from deadly glacial lake outburst floods. Beyond the mountains, ice loss is transforming coastlines, disrupting food sources, and threatening homes. Rising seas, fueled by Antarctic ice sheet melt, are increasing flood risks for coastal cities. In the Arctic, diminishing sea ice is eroding land and destabilizing communities, while warming waters endanger entire ecosystems, including crucial fisheries. Quote within the quote, we are surprised by the rate at which climate change is impacting the icy parts of the world, end quote, said Doug McAyale, a professor emeritus at the University of Chicago, in a recent article from the Natural Resources Defense Council. But I'm not going to say that it doesn't make sense. Sadly, it is fully understandable, end quote. I agree with the professor emeritus at the University of Chicago. Climate change is impacting the entire world, not only the icy parts. When viewed within the context of abrupt, irreversible climate change, it makes perfect sense. Sadly, as the professor said, quote, it is fully understandable, end quote. The next section is titled, Why is this occurring? It begins with a sentence that indicates complete understanding of the gravity of the situation. Quote, melting ice doesn't just mean rising sea levels, it can reshape life as we know it, end quote. Not only can melting ice, quote, reshape life as we know it, end quote, it can also cause the extinction of all life on Earth. This is the power of the rapid rate of environmental change, as I have described repeatedly in this space. Specifically, the abrupt loss of Arctic sea ice poses an existential threat to all life on Earth. The article in the Cool Down hints at the importance of Arctic sea ice. Quote, in the Arctic, communities that have relied on stable ice for generations are now struggling due to crumbling infrastructure and disrupted food storage systems. Warmer temperatures have also contributed to the decline of key species, like snow crabs, leading to economic turmoil for fishing communities, end quote. Economic toil is the least of our problems. As I have pointed out a few thousand times, dating to May 28, 2009, quote, if you think the economy is more important than the environment, try holding your breath while counting your money, end quote. The article continues with out-of-date information. Quote, scientists warn that the situation is accelerating and we may be approaching irreversible tipping points, end quote. As you probably recall, the Designed to Fail Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change concluded climate change was irreversible on September 24, 2019, with its IPCC Special Report on the Ocean and Cryosphere in a Changing Climate, More than 5.5 years later, the cooldown concludes that, quote, we may be approaching irreversible tipping points, end quote. Maybe, could be, perhaps, possibly. The cooldown has been producing decent articles on anthropogenic climate change and other subjects. It seems broaching the topic of abrupt, irreversible climate change remains off limits for corporate media outlets years after the IPCC replaced the Advisory Group on Greenhouse Gases. That was 37 years ago, during the Ronald Reagan administration. We've learned quite a bit about anthropogenic climate change during the last 37 years, although you'd never know it based on reports from corporate media outlets. The cooldown continues with a subsection titled, quote, what's being done about it, end quote. The big news includes, quote, relocating at-risk communities and reinforcing glacial dams, end quote. There is also mention of retreating to safer ground and coastal protections in the Arctic. Quote, on a broader scale, global efforts to curb pollution and transition to cleaner energy sources are critical to slowing ice melt. Reducing reliance on dirty energy like coal and oil can lessen heat-trapping pollution, helping to stabilize the climate, end quote. As usual, and as expected, there is no mention of the aerosol masking effect, and the superheating of the planet certain to result from, quote, reducing reliance on dirty energy like coal and oil, end quote. The bottom line from the cooldown comes in the final paragraph, quote, the ice is melting faster than ever, but there's still time to act. Each step we take toward a cleaner, more sustainable world helps protect the people, ecosystems, and communities that depend on these frozen landscapes, end quote. Never mind the myth of sustainability. Never mind that Earth is amid abrupt, irreversible climate change, as admitted even by the IPCC. This is a very disappointing article from the cooldown.